Chosen one, lock your attention on this message right now. That quiet restlessness you've been feeling, the one sitting right underneath the surface of your normal life, stop pushing it down. The enemy is working overtime right now for one reason and one reason only. He knows what's about to be released over your life in the next few days. It all shifts tomorrow. The stagnation, the waiting, the feeling that nothing is moving fast enough. But here's what you need to understand before I go any further. This is not about to change because of chance. It's about to change because of what you have already done. Think back to that moment this week when everything in you wanted to force an outcome, wanted to make something happen on your own timeline, but you held back. You waited instead. You chose patience when every nerve in your body was screaming at you to move. You didn't know it then, but that restraint was a seismic decision. That one moment of surrender was the exact act that authorized heaven to intervene. You didn't delay your breakthrough, you unlocked it. Something inside you redirected every plan you had for today just to bring you to this message. So anchor your spirit, because what I am about to read over your life is not a suggestion. It is a decree. You did not find this recording by accident. The algorithm did not bring you here. The Holy Spirit did. This is a divine appointment that was written into the timeline of your life before you ever took your first breath. You are not stumbling into this moment. You are escorted here. Stay until the final second of this message, because in the next few minutes I am going to hand you the legal verdict that officially closes the chapter of your life that felt like wandering. I am going to walk you through the exact evidence that proves you are not behind. You are precisely on schedule, and at the end we are going to seal this new season with a declaration so precise that it locks your elevation into place and bars the door on the version of your life you are leaving behind. Do not click away. Your future self, the one living in everything you have been praying for, is on the other side of this message. If you leave now, you leave before the sentence is finished. I know what the last 72 hours have felt like. The atmosphere around your life has shifted. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. But something has changed, and you can feel it in a way you cannot quite explain to anyone else. Maybe you have been moving through your days with this unusual stillness underneath your chest. Not peace exactly. More like the moment right before something enormous arrives. Or maybe you woke up at 300 of the morning this week, and you lay there in the dark with thoughts moving too fast to catch, feeling like your spirit was awake before your mind had permission to be. Or maybe it was something simpler. Maybe you were standing in an ordinary moment this week, washing dishes or sitting in traffic, and a thought crossed your mind completely unprompted. Something is about to change, and you did not know where it came from. You feel it. Something is ending. Something else is about to begin, and the space between those two things is exactly where you are standing right now. And in that space, the enemy has started whispering a very specific lie. Listen to your thoughts. He has been telling you that the reason things feel this suspended is because you are not ready. He is replaying moments from the last few months over and over in your mind. That moment when you chose rest instead of grinding. That moment when you walked away from something instead of fighting for it. That moment when you stopped performing, stopped striving, stopped trying to manage every outcome. The accuser is telling you that those were the moments you forfeited your elevation. He is telling you that the people who stayed in the race while you were quiet are the ones who are going to receive what was promised to you. But I need you to hear what the scripture actually says about this moment. Habakkuk 2:3 says about this moment. Habakkuk 2:3 says, "For the vision is yet for an appointed time. It speaks of the end and does not lie. Though it tarries, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not delay." Listen to that word. It will surely come. It will not delay. The appointed time is not arbitrary. The appointed time is not arbitrary. The appointed time is precise. The enemy has been using your own timeline against you, making you believe that because it has not happened yet on your schedule, it has been cancelled or postponed because of your failures. But that is not postponement. That is positioning. You are not behind. You are being placed. The wild, accelerated, almost unbelievable shift that is about to come into your life is not coming slowly, When it moves, it is going to move with a speed that your current normal life cannot contain. The version of your life you are living right now, the routine, the quiet, the waiting, is not the destination, it is the runway. And you are about to take off. The restlessness you have been feeling is not anxiety, it is acceleration. The pressure you've been sitting underneath is not punishment, it is compression. And things that are compressed do not stay compressed forever, they explode forward. You did not stumble into stagnation, you were being loaded. And the loading is finished. Because what you're feeling right now, that quiet knowing, that restless energy that won't let you settle, that sense that something enormous is cracking open just beneath the surface of your life, that's not anxiety, that's not confusion. That is God pressing his thumb into your chest and saying, "Wake up, it's time." And some of you have been waiting so long for this moment that you almost stopped believing it would come. You almost made peace with small. You almost convinced yourself that what you were living was what you were meant to live. You started to redecorate the waiting room, hanging pictures on the walls, rearranging the furniture, calling it home, when it was never meant to be your destination. It was always meant to be a corridor, a passageway, a place you moved through, not a place you stayed. But then something shifted. Maybe it was subtle, a dream that wouldn't leave you, a verse that kept finding you, a name spoken over you by someone who didn't even know your story. Maybe it was violent. Maybe it came through a loss, a silence, a door that closed so hard the whole hallway shook, and the sound of it closing followed you for months, maybe years, echoing in the quiet moments when you almost forgot to keep hoping. And here you are, still standing, still watching, still carrying something inside you that refuses to die. That thing inside you, that ember that persisted through every season that should have extinguished it, that is not stubbornness. That is prophecy. That is God's own breath staying lit in the lantern of your soul, because he is not finished with what he started, and he never finishes what he starts halfway. Some messages don't just inform, they activate. If something stirred deep in your spirit just now, you may be ready to receive the Chosen One's blueprint. This sacred guide reveals the 8 divine patterns behind your calling, your suffering, and your destiny. It also comes with the full audiobook, so you can absorb it during prayer, rest, or quiet moments with God. And for those called to speak his truth, you'll also receive Activating Your Prophet Mantle, a powerful bonus ebook for those carrying a prophetic assignment. The link is in the first pinned comment, but only for a limited time. Now let me show you why this is happening. Because the enemy of your breakthrough isn't who you think it is. And this matters. It matters more than almost anything else I could say to you today, because if you misidentify the enemy, you'll spend your energy fighting the wrong battle. You'll push against doors that were never the real obstacle. You'll wage war in the natural realm against things that were only ever symptoms of something happening in the spiritual. Most people assume they're stuck because of their circumstances. The finances aren't there, the doors haven't opened, the right people haven't shown up, the timing never seems to line up. And so they wait, they pray, they declare, they believe, they write the vision on index cards and tape it to their bathroom mirror. They fast, they confess the promises, and still nothing moves. The atmosphere feels thick, impenetrable, like praying through glass, and after long enough, that stillness starts to feel like rejection. Like heaven is silent, not because it's strategic, but because it's indifferent. Like God forgot. Like he wrote your name on a list and then misplaced the page. But here's what I need you to understand before we go any further. The barrier isn't outside of you. It never was. The thing keeping you in that holding pattern, that perpetual almost, that frustrating cycle of being close but never quite crossing, it doesn't live in your bank account or in someone else's decision, or in the stars not aligning. It lives in the agreements you made when the pain was loudest. Because when life breaks you down at just the right angle, at just the right moment of vulnerability, when your defenses are stripped and your faith is stretched to its thinnest thread, you stop believing what God said, and you start believing what the breaking felt like. And those two things are not the same. They have never been the same. But in the middle of the breaking, it is almost impossible to tell them apart. The pain speaks so loudly. The wound gives its testimony so convincingly. And so you come to a conclusion, not out of faithlessness, but out of pain. And that conclusion becomes the lens through which you filter every subsequent move of God. Think of Elijah, one of the most powerful prophets who ever walked the earth. A man who called down fire from heaven, who shut up the sky for 3 years, who prayed with such precision that not a cloud formed, not a drop fell, because the word of the Lord was in his mouth, and he spoke it with authority. This was a man who stood alone against 450 false prophets on Mount Carmel, who drenched the altar with water 3 times, because God was not interested in making it easy. He was interested in making it undeniable, and watched fire fall from heaven and consume everything, the sacrifice and the stone and the water in the trench, until all the people fell on their faces and declared, "The Lord, He is God." This was the man. This was the history in his hands, and yet the moment Jezebel sent him a single message of threat, just words, just ink on a page or breath through a messenger, he ran. He didn't walk, he ran. He sat under a juniper tree in the wilderness and asked God to take his life. He said, "It is enough. I am not better than my fathers." And I need you to sit with that for a moment, because it is one of the most important moments in all of Scripture, for people carrying what you're carrying. This is the man who outran a chariot through a rainstorm by the hand of God. His legs moved by supernatural speed through supernatural weather, because the Spirit of the Lord was upon him. And one voice, one threat, one moment of isolation and exhaustion was enough to make him forget everything he'd seen and everything he was. It was enough to make a fire caller ask for death. That's not weakness. That is not a character flaw. That is what happens when you carry an assignment that is bigger than your current capacity to process it. That is what happens when the anointing takes you to heights your emotional infrastructure hasn't yet been built to sustain. And if you're honest, and I'm asking you to be honest right now, in whatever private space you occupy as you receive this, you know exactly what that feels like. You've been there. You may be there right now. You may be the person who has seen God do the impossible and still found yourself under your own juniper tree, exhausted, done, asking heaven if you can finally be released from the weight of what you were chosen to carry. Because you've had your fire from heaven moments too. You've seen God move in ways you couldn't explain to anyone without sounding unhinged. You felt his hand on your life in ways that defied logic, defied probability, defied every earthly explanation. Moments where the only conclusion was God, where the only reasonable response was worship. And then the threat came. Maybe it wasn't a Jezebel. Maybe it didn't come in the form of a person at all. Maybe it was a diagnosis that the doctor delivered with such clinical certainty that it felt like a verdict. Maybe it was a betrayal by someone who knew your deepest prayers and used them against you. Maybe it was a season of such profound silence from heaven that you started to wonder if you'd imagined the whole thing, if the fire had been real, if the voice had been real, if any of it had been real, if any of it had been real. And in that moment, you made an agreement, not consciously, not with deliberate words spoken aloud in a ceremony of surrender, but somewhere deep in the architecture of your soul, in the foundational layer where your deepest beliefs about yourself and God and what is possible for your life are housed, you decided that maybe you'd misread the calling. Maybe the fire wasn't meant to be yours forever. Maybe the season of favor had been a grace period, not a promise. Maybe you weren't who you thought you were, and you whispered that agreement into the walls of your own spirit, and the walls received it, and they built themselves around it. And now it holds weight in you that you don't even always notice because it's been there so long. It feels structural. And what's coming next will likely surprise you, because the agreement you made in that moment didn't just affect your confidence. It rewired the way you receive. It changed the frequency at which you hear. It's like tuning a radio and then walking away. The station is still broadcasting. The signal is still strong. Heaven is still transmitting. But the dial inside you got moved just a fraction. And now everything comes through with static. And now you're standing in the middle of a new season. God is speaking. Heaven is moving. Things are being arranged on your behalf in the unseen realm, with a precision and intentionality that would take your breath away if you could see it. And you're receiving it through a filter of old pain. You're interpreting every open door through the memory of the last door that slammed. You're reading every promise through the chapter of the last disappointment. You're measuring every moment of favor against the template of the last time you reached for something and it didn't hold. And that's why it keeps feeling just out of reach, not because it isn't there, not because God hasn't already moved, but because something in you is still braced for disappointment. Something in you is still leaning back just slightly, just enough, so that when the fall comes and some part of you is still convinced it will come, you won't have as far to go. You're protecting yourself from a wound that hasn't happened yet. And in doing so, you've built a distance between yourself and your destiny that looks like caution, but functions like a wall. But here's where it goes deeper. It's not just the agreement, it's what the agreement gave birth to. Because agreements don't stay still, they grow. They reproduce. They become a lens that reshapes everything you see through it. When you stop believing in the full weight of who you are, when you stop holding the whole truth of your calling in both hands and standing under its full sky, you start making yourself smaller to survive. It happens gradually, which is what makes it so dangerous. You start editing your faith, trimming your expectations down to a size that feels responsible. Calling it wisdom when it's actually self-protection, wearing wisdom's clothing. You stop asking for the big thing, the thing that God put in your bones, the thing that comes to you at 3 a.m. and won't release you, and you start settling for the manageable thing, because at least if you fail at something small, the wreckage is contained. At least if it doesn't work out, you won't have lost too much. At least the wound will be a bruise and not a fracture. And this slow, quiet contraction of your faith doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come in and declare what it is. It masquerades as maturity. It dresses itself in the language of balance and practicality and not getting too ahead of yourself. And before you know it, you've made yourself so small that the God-sized calling inside you no longer fits the person you've agreed to be. David had this moment too, not the famous moments we celebrate, not the giant's fall or the throne room or the psalms written in the overflow of divine encounter, but the quiet, unsung moment in the valley of Elah before the stone ever left his hand, before the sling ever moved through the air, before Goliath ever hit the ground. The moment where a teenage boy looked at what everyone else had looked at for 40 days and decided to ask a different question. Every person around him told him to be smaller. His own brother Eliab, his own flesh and blood, the one who had grown up in the same house, who knew the same father, who understood the family's history, called him arrogant for asking questions, called him presumptuous for showing up, told him to go back to the sheep. And David had a choice: agree with the room or agree with God, agree with the testimony of 40 days of fear, or stand on the testimony of a lion and a bear that God had already delivered into his hands, agree with the visible or anchor himself to the invisible. And we know what he chose. But what we forget, what the Sunday school version of this story smooths over, is that the choice wasn't easy. The room was loud. The room had reasons. The room was filled with soldiers, men of war, men who had actual battlefield experience, men who had earned the right to speak about risk and danger and what happens when you underestimate an enemy. And the room was made up of people who loved him. That's the part we have to hold. It wasn't a room full of enemies. It was a room full of people who genuinely, sincerely, with their whole hearts believed they were protecting David from something terrible. They thought their smallness was kindness. They thought their fear was wisdom. They thought talking him down was love. Sometimes the voice that shrinks you the most is the voice of someone who means you no harm. And that is one of the most disorienting spiritual experiences a chosen person can have, because you can't be angry at them. You can't write them off as the enemy or cut them out of your life or deal with it cleanly, because they genuinely believe they're protecting you. Their fear is real, their love is real, their concern is real. And it still has the power to dismantle your courage if you allow their ceiling to become your sky. But God is not calling you to be protected. He's not calling you to be managed or maintained or cushioned from the consequences of full obedience. He's calling you to be positioned. And sometimes the most dangerous thing in the room isn't the opposition. It's the well-meaning love that wants to keep you safe from the very thing God is trying to release you into. Stay with me. Because coming up is the layer underneath this one that most people never get to see. And it's the layer where the real cycle lives. The layer that explains why you can have a revelation and still not break free. Why you can understand something in your mind and still feel it working in your life. Why you can preach about it on Sunday and still feel trapped by it on Monday. Because here's what happens when you spend long enough making yourself smaller, when the contraction goes on for months, for years, for long enough to feel like a permanent condition. It stops feeling like a choice. It calcifies. It becomes an identity. You stop saying, "I'm playing it safe right now," which at least acknowledges that safety is a temporary posture. And you start saying, "This is just who I am. I'm not really a big dreamer. I'm not really the type that things like that happen to. I don't have the personality for that kind of breakthrough. I'm just not built that way." And now the limitation isn't just a behavior you fell into during a hard season. It isn't just a coping mechanism you adopted when the pain was loudest. It's a belief system. It has roots. It's a theology. You've unconsciously constructed a version of God that only operates within the boundaries of your pain. A God who is big enough to save you, but not quite big enough to elevate you. A God who calls other people to the extraordinary, the platform, the influence, the supernatural provision, the staggering reversal, but somehow calls you to the reasonable, the modest, the manageable. A God who parts seas for others but asks you to walk around. A God who turns water into wine for wedding guests but asks you to be grateful for what's already in the cup. And this is the moment in the message where I need to say something that might sit uncomfortably, that might press against a belief you've held so long it feels like yours. That version of God is a lie. Not a lie the enemy invented in a single moment of opposition and inserted into your thinking from outside. But a lie you built brick by brick, stone by stone, during the years when the real God felt absent, when the silence stretched so long you needed something to explain it. And so you reconstructed God in the image of your pain. You made him smaller so the gap between what he promised and what you were experiencing made some kind of sense, and you built it to survive. That's important. I need you to hear that with compassion, not condemnation. You built it because you needed something to hold on to when the real thing felt too painful to keep reaching for. You built it to protect your heart from the vertigo of open-ended faith. And it served you in that season. But you are no longer in that season. The survival structure you built in the wilderness is not meant to be your permanent dwelling. And the architecture that kept you alive in the desert is now the very thing standing between you and what God is releasing in this new land. The tent was necessary then, but you are walking into a kingdom now, and you cannot inhabit a kingdom while you are still crouching in a tent, because this is the season, not eventually. Not when you're more ready, not after the next preparation period, or the next test, or after you've dealt with one more layer, or attended one more conference, or read one more book, or had one more conversation with your accountability partner, or processed one more wound in therapy. Though all of those things have their place, but not as prerequisites to what God wants to do now. Heaven is not waiting on your perfection. Heaven is not waiting on your healing to be complete, or your past to be fully resolved, or your faith to reach some threshold. You can never quite calculate because the measurement keeps shifting. God moved through a stuttering Moses who said he couldn't speak, and then gave him the most important speeches in the history of a nation. He called a hiding Gideon a mighty man of valor, while Gideon was still hiding in the winepress, still afraid, still questioning, still not yet the person the title described, and then proceeded to build him into the person the title described. And then proceeded to build him into the person the title declared. He chose David while David was still overlooked by his own father, still small enough to be forgotten in the field, still young enough to be dismissed from the table when the prophet came to anoint the next king. The pattern of God is not to wait until you're ready. It's to move while you're still becoming. It's to call you by your destination before you've left your starting point. It's to name you by the end while you're still in the middle. And the question isn't whether he's ready to release what he promised. The question is whether you're willing to receive it in your current, unfinished, still healing, still growing, still figuring it out state. Because that is the only state in which he has ever moved through human beings. There is no other kind. And what's about to land next is the part that breaks the cycle, because we've been looking at the wrong problem this whole time. We've been diagnosing the symptom and calling it the disease. The deeper question isn't whether you believe God can do it. Most people who have found their way to this message believe God can do it. You've seen enough of his power to know that the miracle is not beyond him. The question, the real question, the one that lives in the chest rather than the mind, the one that wakes you at 3 a.m., not with fear, but with a low, persistent uncertainty, is whether you believe you're the one he wants to do it through. That's where the real fight lives. Not in the miracle itself, but in the receiver. Not in the provision, but in the person who has to stretch wide enough to hold it without collapsing. Not in the open door, but in the one who has to be willing to walk through it without proof of what's on the other side. Because God has been speaking your name in rooms you haven't entered yet. Rooms where decisions are being made. Rooms where resources are being allocated. Rooms where people are being positioned for divine appointments they don't yet know are coming. He's been building relationships on your behalf between people who don't know you yet. He's been arranging moments that will look like coincidence. A conversation that leads to an introduction, a book that falls off a shelf, a door that opens out of nowhere from a direction you weren't even watching. And none of it is coincidence. All of it is architecture. All of it is heaven constructing a pathway toward what was always meant to be yours. And all of that is in motion right now. The question is, when it arrives, will you recognize it, or will you deflect it? Will you let it land, or will you immediately begin constructing reasons why it can't be real, why it's too good, why you don't deserve it, why someone else would have received it if it were really from God? Will you dismiss it as too good to be true? Will you find a reason it couldn't possibly be for you? Because that is the refined, sophisticated work of the old agreement. It doesn't block the blessing from arriving. It trains you to turn it away at the door. Because here's the confrontation, and I say this with all the love heaven can carry, with every ounce of compassion that truth is capable of holding. Some of you have become so comfortable in the struggle that the breakthrough feels foreign, and without realizing it, without ever choosing it consciously, you have developed a complicated loyalty to your suffering. Not because you enjoy it, not because you want to stay in it, but because your suffering has become the most familiar evidence of your calling. It has become the proof you offer yourself that you are serious, that you are submitted, that you are the real thing. You know how to be the person who's going through it. You know how to be faithful under pressure. That version of you is refined, is practiced, walks with a particular kind of gravitas that people recognize. You know how to hold on when everything is telling you to let go, but do you know how to receive? Do you know how to stand in open field blessing, where there are no walls to lean against, no pressure to push back on, no trial to press into, and not feel disoriented? Do you know how to stand in an open field of favor without immediately scanning the horizon for where the attack is coming from? Do you know how to rest in acceleration without dismantling it out of sheer discomfort with the unfamiliar? Because for some of you, God is about to bring you into something you've prayed for, and the greatest risk isn't that you'll fail to receive it, it's that you'll receive it and then quietly, systematically, almost unconsciously begin to unravel it. Because peace feels more threatening than pressure when pressure is all you've known. And here is the unexpected thing, the thing you didn't see coming when this message began. The final layer that reframes everything we walked through together, that puts a name on the deepest mechanism beneath all the others. The thing that has been blocking you, underneath the old agreements, beneath the shrinking, below the misplaced loyalty to suffering, at the very foundation of all of it, is an unexamined belief that you have to earn what God already gave by grace, that your worthiness has to be established before your breakthrough can be received, that there is a ledger somewhere in heaven, and it has to balance before the release can happen, that you must prove something, fix something, resolve something, become something, must cross some invisible finish line of deserving before you are allowed to step fully into what heaven declared over you before you were born, before you took your first breath, before you made your first mistake or your last one. And that belief is not humility. I know it looks like humility. I know it speaks the language of reverence and submission and unworthiness before God, but it is not humility. Humility says, I can't do this without you. This belief says, you can't do this through me yet. And that second statement is not about God's power. It's a verdict on your value. And it is actually, at its root, an agreement that the cross wasn't enough, that what Jesus did, what he accomplished on that hill, what he settled in the transaction of his blood, what he declared finished with his final breath, was sufficient for others, but somehow, for reasons specific to your history and your failures and your particular brand of falling short, insufficient for you. That everyone else gets to walk into grace fully, but you have to earn your way to the front. And the moment you see that, truly see it, not just as a theological concept, but as the living, breathing belief that has been operating in you, everything shifts, because you cannot hold that belief and hold the cross at the same time. They are mutually exclusive, and you have to choose which one is true. You are not waiting to become worthy. You are not in a holding pattern until you earn your way to the front of something God already placed you in. You were chosen before you understood what being chosen meant. Chosen before the foundation of the world, according to Ephesians 1, before any of your choices had been made, before any of your failures had been tallied, before any of your agreements had been formed. You were called before you had the courage to answer. Called by name the way God called Samuel in the dark, the way he called Abram out of everything familiar, the way he called Lazarus out of the grave, and the dead man came. And the season that is opening right now is not the reward for finally getting it right. It is not the result of finally being ready. It is not something you earned through the suffering or the faithfulness or the endurance, as real and significant as all of those things are. It is the fulfillment of something written long before you ever made a single mistake, something authored in eternity and moving now, in time, in your actual life, in the actual circumstances of your days, moving toward you not because you deserve it, but because it was always yours. And the decree of heaven over your life is not contingent on the opinions of your past. It was never contingent on that. So place your hand on your heart and speak this with your own voice, because something in the atmosphere needs to hear you say it. Something in the spiritual realm around you is waiting on the sound of your agreement with heaven. Something shifts when chosen people open their mouths and declare what God has already declared. Not because the words have magic in themselves, but because agreement is the posture that receives. Because open hands can hold what closed fists cannot. Because the declaration you make from your mouth reaches into your own spirit and begins to dismantle agreements that silence never could. I release every agreement I made in the dark. I release the version of myself that was built for survival and step into the one that was built for purpose. I am not waiting to become worthy. I already am. I open my hands, I open my heart, and I open my life to what heaven has been holding for this exact moment. The skyrocket my spirit felt was real. The shift is real. The season is real. And I step into it now, not when I'm ready, not when I'm healed, not when I'm healed, not when it makes sense, but now. I am chosen. I am activated. And I move forward knowing that what God authored over my life, no delay, no wound, and no lie I ever believed can cancel. It is done, and it begins today. And if you spoke those words and felt something move, not just in your emotions, but in the deep, knowing place in your spirit, then understand that what you just participated in was not performance, it was alignment. You aligned your voice with what heaven has been saying over you, and alignment is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of movement. It is the moment the ship turns toward the port it was always meant to reach. Everything you've carried, everything you've survived, every season that pressed you and pruned you and stripped you down to what was unbreakable, all of it was preparation for a person capable of holding what God is about to release. Not punishment. Preparation. There is a difference, and it is everything. The wilderness wasn't rejection, it was formation. The silence wasn't abandonment, it was gestation. The delay wasn't denial, it was the space in which the fullness of what God intended had time to develop, to deepen, to become something strong enough to carry the weight of the assignment. And now, the weight is coming. Not as a burden, but as a crown. Not as something to endure, but as something to steward. And you are ready, not because everything is resolved, but because you are willing. And in the economy of God, willingness has always been the threshold. It was the posture of Mary when she said, "Be it unto me according to your word." It was the posture of Isaiah when he said, "Here am I, send me." It was the posture of every ordinary person through whom God did extraordinary things, not the posture of arrival, but the posture of availability. And you are available, and heaven has been waiting for exactly this.